Welcome everyone to our third BAR University, Historic Materials Demolition Purview District, everything you did and didn't want to know. Like I said, this is our third in our continuing series where we introduce topics that we kind of go through all the time, present a PowerPoint, oftentimes have some handouts, and then all of this is going to be made available on our website so you can go back and reference the videos and whatever handouts we have. So this is a growing resource that we're bringing to y'all. So I'm happy to see some familiar faces and some new faces as well. So thank you all for coming. And I will get this going with Frankie.
So we've realized lately that there's a good bit of the city that actually doesn't know what this district is. It's frequently known as demo purview, but if you look at the gray areas on the map, this is the Historic Materials Demolition Purview. This was created by City Council in 2017, and it is the area of the peninsula north of Line Street, south of Mount Pleasant Street. Specifically, the area is in gray. We've got some other historic corridors and things from running up through there, but and what this purview is it is historic materials that are visible from public rights of way on structures more than 50 years old. And I have a lot of people say, why 50 years old? Because right now 50 years old is in the 70s, and why do we care? 50 years is a timeline that comes from eligibility requirements for the National Register of Historic Places and from the Secretary of Interior standards. So that's why that was put into ordinance and why we use this 50-year timeline. Right where it is. Okay, so I'm going to just summarize this. This is the definition. This is the specific language from the zoning ordinance. And it talks about how our definition of demolition is removal of entire structure or portions of a structure. And it has to do with historic architectural character, such as roofs, columns, porches, balustrades, chimneys, siding, windows, doors, shutters, site walls, fences, and other unique architectural features, which if lost would compromise the historic architectural character. Both the form and the original materials of these features are important because they reflect the craftsmanship and the unique design of individual buildings. So another thing that I have people talk about all the time when they talk to us about these projects is, but it has a red X on it. Red X does not have anything to do with BAR. Red X's are the fire marshal signs, and they don't denote a condemned building. It doesn't mean the chief building official has ordered it down. This means that the fire marshal has declared external operations only. That's the extent of this sign.
All right, so we have our policy statement for the demo purview. This is called on our website, the Historic Materials North of Line Street. There's a hyperlink in the policy statement section. So if you're looking for this, look for the Historic Materials North of Line Street, and that's going to take you to this. Basically, the demo purview is broken down into two groups. Group 1 and Group 2. Group 1 is treated similar to something down south of Broad. Basically, everything is an in-kind replacement or repair. Group 2's, there is more lenience built into this where you can obviously do in-kind replacement and repairs if that's what you choose, but there are also some appropriate alternative materials that can be used. This is just a screen grab from the actual policy statement. You can see here, these are some examples of scopes of work and what would need to be done. So basically, if there are wood single pane true divided light windows currently in the property, those either need to be repaired or they need to be replaced in kind with wood single pane true divided lights. And the Group 2 is cut off, but to stick with windows, that would basically mean historic wood true divided light windows could be replaced with certain aluminum clad true divided light or simulated divided light windows. There are also examples, these examples and then others on the fact sheet. It goes through, do I need BAR review if I'm painting my house? No. Can I do X, Y, and Z? It'll give examples, it'll say what you can and can't do. So this would be my suggestion as a starting point for anyone with a property that's needing work in demo purview. So you might ask, how do I figure out if it's a 1 or a 2? Again, on our website, if you scroll to the bottom, we have our historic resources surveys and architectural inventories. Click on that link. There are 2 surveys. You want to be looking for the Upper Peninsula survey. And then if you click on the architectural inventory PDF, that will bring up a PDF that lists all properties that were rated, what their ratings are. Again, to define what a group 1 is, it is a building individually eligible or listed on the National Register of Historic Places, or buildings located within an eligible or listed National Register district, or buildings rated a 1 or 2. And then for group 2, it is all buildings rated 3 or 4 or not surveyed. And this next slide will show you, but for the quick note on the rating system, it's very similar to what we used for the rest of the peninsula, but it kind of has the addition of the inventory ratings. So this is what the actual PDF looks like. So if you go to our website, this is exactly what you'll find. So see in the far right-hand corner, I know it might be difficult for some of you to see, but that is the actual numeric rating. I tried to find a page that had a good mix of these. So there are 1s, 2s, 3s, and 4s on here. And then if your property is not at all on this list, it was not rated. It was not surveyed. So you would be group 2. So kind of breaking down how to read this. I've listed all these in yellow. You're going to be group 1. If it's in white here, you'd most likely be a group 2. So we've tried to highlight most of the group 1s in green. It is not a hard and fast. You still need to make sure just in case it was missed. But basically, if it is in green on that right-hand column, it is going to be group 1. This was taken directly from the survey in 2004. So this is kind of the Excel file put into a PDF. So I will say the addresses and the address numbers are combined. So if you're going to Control F search, don't put a space. I personally just do the actual address because it's not going to search correctly.
Ask a question on
Yeah.
that. So in the far right hand column, there's numbers like 4 minus. What does that mean?
I think the plus and minus is a subcategory of the architectural rating that was added for this specific one. If you go to the other link on the city site, I think the final report, it'll explain that.
Okay.
So, let me go back here real quick. So this is kind of step 2, I would say, after or I guess step 1, identify where you are, group 1 or 2, then use that, the policy statement. You can kind of get a good base understanding of what you're trying to do and what we're going to require. And then when it comes time to get a permit, basically, we look at everything exterior in demo purview. Not everything that we look at is going to be under our purview, but we're going to basically review that permit to determine, is this in BAR, or can we say, thanks, but no thanks, you skip the hardest part, go down to building. So we're really looking at everything just to confirm. You might come in and say, I'm just painting. Great, keep on moving. We don't need to look. You may come in and say, I'm replacing siding. Okay, let's sit down, take a look at what you're doing. And then we could go from there in determining what is actually necessary for us. So because of this, I'm going to say that if you're doing work outside in demo purview, just have that BAR application filled out. It's going to make the process a lot faster. If we do determine you need it, now we don't have to reach out and request it. It's just easier to have it from the get-go. What can be done in our actual permit center across the way? Obviously fences. We don't look at new construction. This is if you have a standard fence that's less than 50 years old, then you need to replace it. You want that new fence. We're still going to look at that demo. Once we identify it's not 50 years old, then you're free to do whatever you want for the new fence. Mechanical trade permits.
Question now, just to clarify, the fences though, you're not allowed to put chain link fence though.
Correct.
Yeah.
Well, technically new construction.
Yeah, technically, we don't look at new construction there, so we're just verifying that if you're removing an old fence, that it's not 50 years old.
So you can always remove a chain link fence anywhere on the peninsula. We're not going to stop you from doing that.
You just can't add one is what I meant, sorry.
Well, we don't review that,
Not-
so
okay.
if building and zoning allow, yes,
What's the
okay.
line?
In demo purview specifically.
Got it.
Minor rot repairs, bring photos of what you're doing, of the scope of work. They're all in-kind repairs regardless. Roofs, not all roofs can be approved in the permit center, but if it is a shingle roof and you're replacing it with a shingle roof, that can be done. Basically, all of these materials that are less than 50 years old, those can be reviewed and approved in the permit center. And as I've noted before, we do not look at paint. You can unfortunately paint brick or fortunately, if that's what you like, but we are not going to be reviewing any paint in demo purview. So.
Okay. I'm Rachel. I'm the preservation planner. So that's kind of how you submit for the permit. It's stuff that is smaller changes. It's things that are less than 50 years old. But then what goes to the actual Board of Architectural Review? What are the things that you need to come to the meeting for? So those are going to be larger scale changes or removal of character defining features. So if you want to change your windows to something that is not in kind, if you want to change a window to a door, if you want to do an addition and you need to demo the back half of the building, all of those types of things are going to go to the board. So these are just some examples. It's not at all an exhaustive list. So in order to go to the board, as Travis and Frankie mentioned, typically, and we are not allowed to look at new construction or what goes next, which means that board applications can get kind of tricky because the board cannot see what is coming next. So they can see no proposed. So do not show proposed. Anything that shows proposed, we will have to reject because the board just at this point legally cannot look at what comes next. So we cannot take it to them at all. So if you're looking to demo an entire building, if you just want the building gone, it's over 50 years old and it has to go to the board, you're going to use the standard, you probably are familiar with it, the demolition requirements checklist. That's just for a full demolition. We actually are today unveiling hopefully a better, more comprehensive version of a historic materials demo checklist specifically for things that you want to take to the board that are not going to be a full demolition. So it helps to kind of create, the goal is to help us create a more comprehensive package that will meet kind of what the board needs to see and also make it easier on y'all to apply. So for demo purview, there's the two checklists, the demo for the full building and then the new historic materials requirements. So anything outside of a full demolition, and just like a demo purview, like you've been doing for demo purview right now, it will still be kind of that one stage review. It's not going to be the conceptual preliminary final that you may be familiar with south of Vine Street. This is just, you're taking it to the board and the board says presumably yes or no. So this is the current requirements for demolition. It's the one-page checklist for a full demolition. Again, you should be familiar with that. It's on our website. And again, that's the total full demolition. The one for historic materials demo purview is basically kind of a truncated version of the conceptual submittal requirements. So really, the board, we need to see a existing and a proposed demolition plan. So we want to see what the house currently looks like and the elements you want to remove, which is kind of weird and tricky to think of, especially if you're doing something like an addition, the board's not looking at the addition. They're looking at the portion of the roof that you need to remove, the windows that you're gonna take out, the siding that's coming off, those types of things. So hopefully this will bring some more clarity and kind of help people move
Rachel,
through.
I have a question with that. So if you're really coming to y'all, if you're adding on to a house in this area, and you're really not, like, you're adding a new area to the back. So for instance, you're removing one wall and one window.
Mhm.
Is that what you're coming
Yeah.
to ask for?
Yep,
And you're not showing anything proposed?
no. So it would be,
Okay.
you're really just showing like hatch marks on your existing drawing of the wall section that you're taking out and the window. Is that?
Okay. Yes.
I know it's a very funky way to look at it, but unfortunately, that's just kind of what we have in this demo.
So, previously you had said it's, anything from public right of way. So
And that's still true.
street, side view and everything.
Mhm.
And even, I have an instance where even going a street behind, you can't see the back of the house. It's not visible at all.
Mhm.
So I don't need to request?
So you'll still need to submit in some form. Preservation staff will make the final determination of whether or not it's visible from a public right of way. So that may require a site visit to just go out and physically look.
Yeah.
But if it truly is not visible from a public right of way, then
So it's not gonna hurt to include it?
no. If you are wondering whether or not you should include it, go ahead and submit. For the board, applications are reviewed every 2 weeks. You're not charged an application fee to apply, only if you're actually on the agenda for the board. And we'll send you an email telling you if it's something that doesn't need to go to the board. So it may take 2 weeks, but it is sometimes a more straightforward answer, and then I'm gonna move.
You would need this answer prior to submitting anything, to zoning or anything if you were adding on. For instance, you'd need like to make a demo approval.
I mean, if it's something that you're like, if it's less than 50 years old, if it's
Yeah,
all of those things and you have evidence of all of those
Right.
things, theoretically, you could submit for a permit and include all of that.
Right.
BAR will still be tagged as a review step in that
Okay.
permit, but we would look at it and say, okay, well, you want a demo is less than 50 years old. But if you think maybe it's 50 years old, but we can't really prove it, or maybe it's not visible from the public right of way, but maybe it is.
if we know it's over 50 years old though, then we would need approval from y'all prior to moving forward in any other way, correct?
Yes, so if you are submitting for a permit, if it's something that doesn't need to go to the board, but it is more than 50 years old, BAR will be in that permit review. So then zoning, building, and BAR would all review.
And you just
That's the same
include the demo though. You're not including the what you're asking for, which would need the approval from zoning to move forward, is what I'm.
So, and this is again where it gets tricky because historic demo purview, and maybe Frankie can better answer this, but it's a BAR thing. So if you're
Okay.
submitting for a permit, zoning and building are still looking at the whole project. It's just BAR that's not looking at new construction.
So if what you're needing to do is like you need to go get a variance or something
Yes.
for what you're proposed, you don't have to have your BAR approval lined up yet.
Okay.
It's a good idea because if BAR is gonna deny it, that might change your
Right.
variance request.
Yeah.
So I generally tell people, don't go for your variance yet because it might change based on what happens at the board. But you are free to do that if you want. So you're not held to that same kind of timeline, like you must have a variance before you come to BAR for
Right.
conceptual things.
Okay.
That the question we were getting.
I
trying to
think
get-
so, yeah.
Okay,
But we can, further to your thing, we can go in the portal and upload our BAR application, supporting documents, and then our residential alteration application and supporting documents, and then it'll trickle through you guys, and then if you approve it, move on.
yes.
Any other questions on that? I know it's a really funky review.
Well, I think part of it with the approvals is how far you want to take doing architectural plans. If it's not going to be approved because you need a variance, you need the historic demo approval. So how far do you go? Like if y'all aren't looking at the proposed addition to make a ruling on, we'll let that wall come down or let this part of the house come down because we want an addition. So it's just the steps of that, because you don't want to pay an architect a fee if you know it's never going to be allowed.
Mhm.
That's kind of one of the questions.
I mean, yes.
No, so like
I'll see if I
for
can.
you.
Yeah.
So, yeah, so that's why I tell people, I would try to get your BAR demo approval first.
Okay.
Because then, right, if the board completely doesn't allow it, you as an architect aren't wasting time. An applicant is not wasting the money,
Yeah.
and remember with BAR, it's a very quick, it's a one-step review, so it's either you get approved or you don't.
Okay, that was my question.
So that actually leads into Frankie.
Why did I sit down?
I know.
Sorry. Okay, so having talked to a bunch of applicants lately, what we've tried to come up with, and this is not a policy thing like the board has approved. We tried to put together a handout of, these are the usual, comments that staff provide when you apply for demo. So if you know what we're gonna say about things ahead of time, that can kind of help you put together your request, because maybe if you're incorporating these, it'll be easier to get approved by the board. So this is just sort of typical staff and board comments. We always talk about character defining features and that these features should be retained. This is roof, that's the material and the shape. Porches, columns, balustrade, chimneys, the siding profile and exposure, windows, doors, shutters, site walls and fences. I am not saying do not ever request removal of these. I'm saying you know ahead of time, staff is gonna have a comment of, this window is a character defining feature, it should be retained. So that helps you prepare your argument for going before the board of why it should be removed. Because you know now that staff is gonna say that when we stand up. We also have some standard comments like, staff has previously supported small portions of demolition at the roof, such as that required for a dormer. I get a lot of requests for demoing portions of the roof, so we've tried to sort of formulate some more specific staff comments. Because that way it allows for people to pursue dormers, it allows for growth in these buildings. Because we're not trying to stop growth, we're trying to give you a way to do that within the parameters that we have. So, I did some very, very rudimentary sketches. This is not at all the quality of thing you would want at the board. But for example, this is a house gable end facing the street. We would talk about how if you're doing a demo on this roof, it should be at the rear of the building, it should be brought down below the ridge, not extend all the way down to the eave, brought in from edges. This is, anytime I have a building of this shape coming to the board, this is a comment I'm gonna write. Pointing in the wrong direction. This one I just did a roof plan because it was easier for me to explain it because I'm talking about the back of the building. When I have a property that the ridge is parallel to the street, what I'm gonna tell you is that any demo of the roof should be on the back. And again, it should be on the back of the building, below the ridge, pulled in from the edges. Standard comment, anytime I have a building like this is what I'm going to say. And then if you're requesting demolition of rear walls, we're always gonna say that rear corner should be retained, whether it's the corner that is brick, that corner board, and that we recommend limiting the demolition to below the eave. Now you know I'm going to say this, so this helps you prepare your argument before the board of, if you're asking for more demo, why you need that demo. And I'm talking about why this is not going to be detrimental to the house for it to go away. And then the other thing, I'm back to Rachel, sorry.
Oh, did you have anything else?
No, I was just gonna say, on the handout, I also have the red X comment that I already made, because this is another kind of standard comment that I put with demo requests, that's not related to BAR, that's related to the fire marshal.
And also the two handouts that you have, again, are those staff comment sheets, and then the new historic materials demolition purview checklist. They're also up at the front if you didn't get them or some more. And they will be available on our website in the coming days as well. So now you kind of know what to do. So if you do need to apply to the board, how do I do that? So there are three components to a full application. Those are gonna be a BAR application form. It's the same application form you would submit for a permit. And then you're gonna want the signed and completed submittal requirements. So again, if you're doing a full demolition, completely demolishing the building, that's gonna be the demolition requirements checklist. If you're doing something like for an addition or just a portion of the home, that's gonna be this new demo purview checklist. And then the third component is gonna be the items from whatever checklist you're working off of. And those items are gonna be compiled into a single PDF. So when you're ready to submit, you're gonna have the three components, the BAR application form, the submittal checklist, and then a PDF of all the items from the submittal checklist. All applications are now submitted online through the customer self-service portal. That's the CSS portal. It's the same place you go to submit permits. So everything is online now. So there's a couple different ways to get to the board application portion. So go to the CSS portal, you're gonna wanna log in first, kind of regardless of which way you go. If you don't have an account, up in the right-hand corner, you can log in or register, follow the steps for that. And if it's your first time submitting to the board or the first time using the CSS portal, know that sometimes it can take a day or two to get an account made. So we highly recommend submitting to create an account as soon as you know you're gonna be submitting. It just will speed up the process and it'll save any panic from deadlines. So once you have an account, you'll log in. Once you log in, it'll take you back to this page and you're gonna click apply. Pretty straightforward. So this is where there's a couple different ways. So method one, you can go up to this box underneath the search bar labeled plans, click on it, and then it'll take you to, it kind of sorts all of the options into just what are considered plans. And then you'll have Board of Architectural Review, and that is what you want. And then you'll just kind of follow and it should walk you through the steps. You'll enter the address, you'll enter all your information, and it'll take you to a place where we'll ask you to upload the 3 files that you need, which again are gonna be that BAR application, the checklist, and the items from the checklist. So, and then once you're all submitted, you'll get an email saying, congratulations, you've submitted, we've received your application. So the other method, again, log in, apply, and then you can also search Board of Architectural Review. If you just start typing it, you'll see it's the first search that comes up. So you click on it, and now all you have is the Board of Architectural Review. And kind of the reason we're driving this home is because if you're going to submit for a permit, a lot of you probably know, you're submitting for usually like the permit type. So you're not actually looking for a Board of Architectural Review. So it's weird, and if you're submitting, especially in demo purview, a lot of people see the demo permit application that just says demo, and they think that's the one for the board. No, if you're going to the board, you need a Board of Architectural Review. Make sense? Yeah, that's kind of the quick and dirty of it. Are there any questions on anything we've covered or haven't covered?
Okay, so the windows. If you can't consider what is going back in place, then how, but on, you know, you had said on there, it's okay if you're going back with single pane.
So
But
you
let's
look
say
at-
I've got,
Yeah.
you know, a couple windows
Summarize this
that
a little bit
are
before you jump in.
beyond repair, and so I need to replace them with the Victor built from y'all's list.
So the reason that we have that North of Line policy and it talks about the group 1 and 2 and that whole list is council wanted us to find a way to not take as many of these things to the board for demo. So it's if you are doing these things, it's not considered a demolition. It's you're doing a repair, therefore you're not changing or removing a character defining feature, so it doesn't require a board review.
Okay.
So it's basically it's showing these are the parameters in order for this to be considered a repair and not under us.
Alright.
And that's kind of what we're
So that just
verifying
stays
there.
Under the alteration permit.
Right.
And you
And
submit your
it
windows back.
keeps it under the permit and we're not requesting demolition for the board.
Okay.
And I know it's a really weird way to do it, but it's the way that we came up with to not have to take all these people to the board for things like that.
Yeah, that helps.
You had a question, sir?
On the initial agenda, said things you may want to know or not want to know. What wouldn't you want to know?
Oh, that was mainly just, we figured we'd inundate people with information. And also that we know that the purview is very tricky and kind of mind bending in some ways. And it's a lot of, if not then this, and, so it gets very tricky.
And a lot of people also don't want to know all the things that we consider character defining, but it's per that ordinance where we get that list from.
And then, so if you gain approval on the demo, sorry, I mean, there's no approval on, it just has to go through permitting and zoning, correct? For what you're adding
So
on?
at that step, what happens is when you go to apply for your permit, whether you end up having to go through BZA for other requests or whatever, once you come back around to permit, there will be a step for BAR staff, and all that staff is doing in that case is making sure that the holes that you're putting in the building for your operation match up with the holes that the board approved.
Got it, okay.
So that's
what-
all we're doing at that point.
If there's a house and a client wants to take off the whole roof and make 10-foot ceilings,
That's really hard to do. Because all that we can look at is that you are essentially demolishing the entire roof.
Yep.
And I told someone this the other day, that could mean that you're elevating the roof slightly. It could mean that you're changing, a gable roof to a hip roof. It could mean that if zoning allows it, you're turning it into a lighthouse shape.
Mhm.
We don't get to look at that. All we know is that that roof is going away. It's like we said, this is weird. This is why we want to explain what we do and don't look at.
and so if they wanna change the style of the front door from rectangle to round, same thing, you're just gonna look at it's being demoed. Okay. But what if they just wanna change the actual door, but the shape opening stays?
Then it would be in a permit and we could verify that as a repair.
Okay.
The areas again, that are from, north of Line Street to Mount Pleasant Street.
Yes.
And that's where the age of the building matters, but south of Line Street, it doesn't matter how old the building is. As long as in that area, then it's considered historic.
So south of Line Street, we've got different regulations. We have multiple districts south of Line Street. We have, and it doesn't go all the way down and show it, but we have the Olden Historic District, which is the oldest part of the peninsula. Then it does not matter the age of it. If you can see it, it's under VAR. Then going up to Line Street, we have the Old City District. That's kind of a weird one. There's an age for if you're demoing something over 50 years old, that matters. If the building itself is old or 100 years old, we look at certain things. And then we have jurisdiction over new construction too. And then, those gold areas on the map, that's the historic corridor. That gets a little bit even more complicated. It's like the demo purview, but we also look at any kind of alterations to a commercial building, and we get to look at new things. So it's each different color on our map has slightly different regulations as to what we can and can't look at.
When you guys are looking at the demo, you're not considering what's going back.
No, we cannot look at that. So all we're looking at is if this is taken away from the building, is that detrimental to the historic character?
Doesn't matter, even if it's gonna be replaced in kind, that,
Well, if it's like a material that's gonna get replaced in kind, that's not a demo.
that's not.
So staff just kind of verifies this is not a demolition. And why it's not a demolition, and we put notes and things. And if it is a demolition, it goes to the board and they get to decide if it's detrimental to remove that. Yes, sir.
It's gonna happen to, 59 Poplar Street.
59 Poplar Street is in progress. The board ruled that it had to be reconstructed as it was.
Right.
And they're to work with staff to provide drawings, showing the building as it was and how they're going to restore it that way.
Yeah, cause I saw the guy like tore it down to the ground basically. But like I think the plans were like the same, like footprint, right? So you just have to submit like new plans to everything. I'm just curious, like how he's gonna like build that again, you know what I mean? Like,
Let me answer your question after we wrap this up, because it's gonna be a little bit of a complicated answer.
Sure.
But I can kind of explain.
yeah.
When you say replacing kind, you've got some wood, clapboard, with whatever profile. I mean, it has to be wood. It couldn't go back as like some additional.
That's what the policy statement talks about. The areas where it has to go back as wood and which places we can look at a cementitious product or another product as being a replacement in kind. So that policy, what it's doing is it's letting us view more modern products as replacements in kind and therefore not demolition
In group 2 building.
in those group 2 buildings, which is where you can do your insulated windows, your cementitious siding, those materials.
I was gonna say, you have that page on window replacements, that there are some others besides like Victor Building you can replace it with.
Yes, and that's just the ones that we have kind of verified so far, and to give you an idea of what we're looking for. You are not limited to those windows.
Right.
There's just, staff has already kind of vetted those. And we are continually researching products and adding to the list.
But even like the mullion style should match what you have,
Right.
and it's like, you're not going 1/1, you know?
Right.
like, yeah.
Because that we have to consider demo, unfortunately,
Exactly.
because it's the character that you're maintaining.
So, thank you, this is a good information, but it is complex, so if a potential applicant had questions, whether it was a permit related question to historic demo purview or something that needed to go to the board, what's the best way for them to get in touch with y'all? Would y'all prefer them come into the permit center and try to talk to someone down at the BAR desk? Would you prefer an email or a phone call? Like, what's the best way for them to get in touch with BAR staff to answer questions before they go through the process of submitting?
I would recommend either emailing one of the staff members or just simply emailing our BAR at Charleston email, which gets distributed amongst staff, or scheduling an appointment to meet with staff. That way we can make sure that you're meeting with somebody who can answer all the questions. And one of us will find time to sit down and answer all the questions the applicant has. Each of us does have time in the permit center, which I'm like my time I have listed in my email signature. But since that kind of varies, I think setting up a meeting is going to be the most straightforward way for an applicant and to guarantee that they have a person who can answer all those questions. So we do have multiple people who work that desk.
I would also add that the permit center is really meant for kind of straightforward, quick, in and out sessions. So if you want to have a more in-depth conversation, setting up a meeting with one of us or just really in-depth email kind of lets us flesh out all the questions you may have and answer everything.
And we've also recently, and this is sort of why Rachel came up with this more in-depth list. This is when you're talking about more, specific features of your building that are being removed. And us explaining to you what the board is looking for, what they can look at, and what they need to see in a drawing to understand what's being removed. And we're also happy to sit down with people and tell them, this would be helpful for you to show, this would be the best way for you to show this demolition. We can talk to you about what you're going to do and give you advice on how to present the demolition request to the board. Another question? Okay.
Going once. All right, well, if there's no more questions, thank you all for coming again. Like I said, this is number 3. We're continuing to grow and make them better and